I've always had a fascination with unique and antique items. There's something about objects with a storied past that compels me to uncover their hidden narratives. That's how I found myself scrolling through Craigslist late one evening. I was on the lookout for a vintage desk lamp, but stumbled upon something else that piqued my interest. A series of curious old coins for sale. Despite the dim glow of my laptop screen straining my eyes, I squinted at the amateur photos of the coins. The seller's description wasn't helpful, just a mysterious line that read, "Coins of lost history, price negotiable." Intriguing enough for me to reach out. I emailed the seller, a man named George, asking for more information and suggested meeting him the following day. I arrived at George's address by late afternoon the next day. The house stood at the end of a secluded road, half obscured by thick towering trees that cast fleeting shadows under the waning sun. I wondered how such a reclusive spot thrived in the heart of the bustling town I called home. An understated yard, seemingly unkempt, added to the mysterious allure. I stepped onto the creaking wooden porch, hesitating before knocking as an inexplicable apprehension washed over me. Rough scratches scarred the doorframe, a detail that put me slightly on edge. George opened the door, an elderly man with a hunched frame and wary eyes. His demeanor was peculiar, a mix of eccentricity and secrecy. Classic signs of a collector, I reasoned. He gestured silently for me to follow him inside. The interior was dimly lit, and the air carried the scent of age. Dusty books and aged wood mingled with something metallic and sharp. As George led me down a narrow hallway, the floorboards groaned under our weight. The feeling of a gaze prickling my neck made me turn sharply, but saw only looming shadows cast by fading light. I dismissed the sensation as paranoia. In the small living room, George showed me the coins. He carefully laid them out over a velvet cloth on an ancient wooden coffee table, their gleam sinister under the single overhead lamp. Each coin was intricately designed with symbols I couldn't recognize. George spoke, his voice rasping like the pages of an old novel. "These coins," he said, "hold secrets, tales not meant for the living." I scoffed lightly, assuming this was his ploy to ramp up their value. "What do you mean?" I asked politely, pretending not to notice the chill in the air. He looked at me intently, his eyes reflecting a depth of stories untold. "These coins once belonged to those who vanished. People seem to fade when owning them," he said. His words clung to the air long after, unanswered and unsettling. A sudden chill settled over me, raising goosebumps. I was tempted to dismiss his story. It was ludicrous. Yet a part of me hesitated, an undercurrent of fear threading through my skepticism. Despite the nagging urge to leave, my curiosity anchored me. Curiosity won. I purchased a coin, not for its tale, but because I couldn't shake the feeling it was linked to truths beyond my grasp. George agreed with a nod, and as I departed he murmured, "Take care, and beware the shadows." His words echoed, lingering in the twilight as I drove away. The night was sleepless. The coin lay on my desk, reflecting slivers of moonlight that seemed to dance with eerie intent. I should have felt thrilled, yet all I felt was unease. Over the next few days, small oddities began to emerge. Objects misplaced, whispers within the silence of my home. The unmistakable feeling of being watched persisted, gnawing at my nerves. The coin, a silent observer, grew colder to my touch each day. One night, as I drifted into a fitful sleep, I dreamed of shadowy figures circling me, whispering secrets in a language I couldn't comprehend. I couldn't shake the feeling that their eyes were mirrors to realms unseen. The mystery climaxed abruptly. A loud crash woke me from a restless sleep. It was coming from the room where I'd kept the coin. Goosebumps punctured my skin as I cautiously approached, heart pounding. There it was, the coin on the ground, amid scattered papers and toppled books. Yet when I tried to retrieve it, the shadows seemed to recoil from my touch, whispering louder, a chorus of warning or invitation. I couldn't tell which. Fear rooted me, raising primal instincts to flee. Despite the trembling in my hands and the tightness in my chest, I hurled the coin into the open backyard. It shimmered once in the moonlight before landing silently into the night. And with it, the whispers ceased, leaving the stillness I'd once cherished. The morning light found me exhausted but relieved. Yet as days turned to weeks, an unshakable awareness lingered. The shadows seemed to breathe more deliberately, the objects settling into places with uncanny accuracy. I considered moving, discarding possessions, but the fear remained, shadowing each step. I shared my tale with none, wary of disbelief. But I knew. I carried a mark now, an invisible tether to realms unseen. George's tale might have been true. I moved houses a year later, Yet a presence subtly clung to my periphery, watching, waiting. The coins of lost history were a portal, perhaps calling to secrets best left untold. My fascination had led to a cursed initiation, and the true horror was intimately knowing yet never fully understanding what lay beyond the living world. Even today I feel the eyes in the shadows. Some nights, under the crescent moon, I swear I hear whispers just beyond perception, reminding me of the world I dared to glimpse but could never fully comprehend. I've always had a curiosity that bordered on recklessness. Maybe that's why when I saw an antique wooden box posted on Craigslist, I couldn't resist. The ad was cryptic. Old oak box, $30. History unknown. May contain secrets. It sounded like a cheap thrill, yet I found my heart racing with the prospect of an adventure. The poster of the ad, a man named Thomas, claimed it was found in the attic of an old family home he was clearing out. He never opened it, he said, and wasn't interested in doing so. Not my kind of curiosity, he wrote in his message reply. I set a time to meet him that evening, just as the golden light of dusk was melting into shadows. Thomas's home was in a forgotten part of town, where the houses stood like weary sentinels along cracked sidewalks. As I approached his porch, my skin prickled with the damp chill that lingered in the air. Thomas was a wiry man in his 60s with sharp eyes. The exchange was quick. He seemed eager to be rid of the box. It was heavier than I expected, its surface scratched yet inviting, whispering of stories untold. Once home, I placed the box on my kitchen table. It looked otherworldly in the dim light, almost magnificently sinister. I decided to wait until nightfall to open it, hoping to heighten the experience with the cover of darkness. I busied myself with mundane tasks, though my mind was never far from the box. Eventually, night blanketed everything in a comforting dark. I found myself sitting opposite my find, a hesitant warrior ready to unsheathe the sword. The lid of the box lifted with a gentle moan, as if it was awakening after a long slumber. The air around me seemed to still. Even the ticking of the clock was swallowed by the quiet. Inside laid a collection of old papers, sealed letters, and a small ornate dagger with a ruby-encrusted handle. I was enchanted by each item, imagining the lives they had touched, the secrets they had kept. As I sorted through the papers, I was engulfed in a myriad of scents, musty, like ancient libraries and forgotten rooms. My fingers brushed against the edges of one particular letter still sealed with a crest that held no meaning to me. I picked it up, my heart thundering a slow cadence against my ribs. Just then, a sudden crash echoed from somewhere deep in the house, making me jump. It was the familiar sound of something heavy but fragile meeting an unyielding surface. I tried to laugh it off. A ridiculous reaction to my own paranoia, I told myself. Aware of every creak in the wooden floor, I made my way into the hallway. Nothing seemed out of place. Then just beyond the door at the end of the corridor I heard it, a whisper, so distinct it set my soul on ice. I held my breath and pressed myself against the wall. Silence wrapped around me once more, but then the whispering started again, soft yet sinister, like a lullaby for the damned. My heart thudded louder, drowning out the sound as I fixed my gaze back on the kitchen. Driven by a desperation to return to normalcy, to douse the fear in trivial explanations, I rushed back to the kitchen. The dagger now lay outside the box, gleaming maliciously under the dim kitchen light. I was sure I hadn't touched it. A sense of being watched set my nerves on a tender edge. The whisper grew clearer as I stood frozen. Staring at the dagger and around the room, my reality twisted. The voice was nearer now, intimately close. Each word wove a nightmare through my mind. Release. Suddenly, the lights flickered, struggling against an invisible current. Shadows twisted and danced, mocking the lone bulb that fought to stay alive. I felt a strange sensation, a brush against my back. I turned sharply, seeing nothing but the haunting emptiness. The darkness had disassembled my courage, leaving me raw and vulnerable. I reached for the dagger, a foolish bid for security against intangible fears. With a deep breath, I summoned whatever resolve I had left, and dashed towards the entry with the box. Slamming the front door behind me, chest heaving, I stood under the streetlight, looking back at the house. My grip on the box tightened with a newfound resolve. As I gazed into the night, I took cautious steps backward. I never entered that house again. With the box sealed and left at the footsteps of some forgotten church, I hoped the whispers would remain entombed. Yet every so often, when the silence of night seeps too deeply into my bones, I hear the echoes of its call. I was just trying to get rid of some old furniture and maybe pick up a few extra bucks. Craigslist seemed like the perfect solution. The apartment felt cramped, cluttered with a random assortment of chairs and tables I didn't need. Most were hand-me-downs from friends or family. I thought it would be easy. Take a few pictures, write a description, and post. That's where it all started. Within a day, I got a message from someone interested in the oak coffee table. His name was Dave. He said he'd been searching for something like it for ages and wanted to come by for a look. We agreed he'd stop by in the evening after work. He seemed polite in his emails, maybe a bit too polite. The day of the meeting, I felt uneasy. Probably just the usual apprehension about meeting a stranger from the internet. Planning to do the exchange outside, I kept my phone in hand just in case. I sat on a weather-worn bench near my building's entrance, the table resting beside me. Dave showed up a few minutes late. Much older than expected, with eyes that seemed oddly vacant. He extended a hand with nervous energy, and we shared a few pleasantries. As Dave inspected the table, the atmosphere shifted. The wind grew colder. Shadows thickened. "Mind if I test it out?" he asked, plopping onto the table. The table creaked under his weight, making me jump. I forced a laugh. "It's not for sitting," I said. "Sturdy," Dave murmured, unfazed. He fumbled for an envelope, offering it to me. "Here's the money, $80, he said. His grip on the envelope was strong, his eyes intense. Finally, he released it and picked up the table. "Thanks," he said, heading to his car. As he drove away, relief washed over me, but unease lingered. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Dave's face haunted me whenever I closed my eyes. Near dawn, I thought I heard a knock, tentative, echoing in the silence. Immobile with fear, I finally checked the peephole. No one was there, just an empty corridor. The next day, I tried to dismiss my fear, but finding another envelope under my door twisted my stomach. Inside were 2 crisp $100 bills. No note, just a cold reminder. I called the police. They took the envelope as evidence, but paranoia shadowed me. Glances caught from the corner of my eye led to nothing, my anxiety mounting. A week later, a call from an unknown number. "Your help was appreciated," a distorted voice said. Heart pounding, I redialed. Nothing but static. That night, the knocking returned stronger. Dave stood in the hallway, eyes gleaming eerily. Backing away, I searched for escape routes. Suddenly, the knocking stopped. The hallway empty, save for another envelope. Police recognized a pattern. Dave, if that was his name, targeted sellers with sinister intent. As time passed, fear faded, though unease never fully left me. Through my window, I often traced the path where Dave had stood, pondering the mysteries he left behind.